and welcome to this. It's called an extraordinary meeting, but it's extraordinary only in the sense that it wasn't planned that we would have this meeting when we set the calendar out for the year. And probably at the time we did set out the calendar for the year, we didn't know that we were going to be all the ICBs were going to be reorganized across the country. So it's extraordinary in that sense, in that we are busy preparing what the government has asked us to do, which is to change the organisation of the integrated care boards in the east of England from 6 to 3, and we're working hard to achieve that. And we have to work at pace because everything has to be in place, we believe, for legislation which will shortly come before Parliament, which will license the establishment of these new larger integrated care boards at the beginning of April. So I want to record at the top of this meeting our gratitude to every colleague who out there has been working so hard on this very demanding, high-paced agenda to get big organisations coming together, ready to work together from the 1st of April. So many thanks to all colleagues involved. I'll just very quickly ask people to introduce themselves. I'm Mike Thorne, your chair for today. Just those who are members of the board. Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Abel. I'm Chief Executive of Mid and South Essex ICB.
Nick.
Nicola Adams, Associate Director of Corporate Services.
Viv.
Hi, I'm Viv Barker. I'm Director of Nursing.
Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen Chesney. I'm the Corporate Services and Governance Support Officer and will be taking the minutes today.
Jo Cripps.
Hi, I'm Jo Cripps. I'm Exec Director of System Recovery for Mid and South Essex ICB.
Anna.
Good afternoon. I'm the Primary Care Partner Member for Mid and South Essex ICB.
T'other Joe.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joe Fielder, Non-Executive Member of the Board.
Jeffrey.
Hi, everyone. Jeffrey Hussain, Associate Non-Exec Member of the ICB Board.
Sam.
Good afternoon, Sam Goldberg, Executive Director for Performance and Planning for the ICB Mid and South Essex.
Claire.
Hello, Claire Hankey, Director of Communications and Partnerships for the ICB.
Matthew.
Matthew Hopkins, Chief Executive. Oh, sorry. Which Matthew, Mike?
Oh, Matthew Hopkins. But...
Okay, yeah, that's me then. Chief Executive of Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust. Thanks.
Emily.
Hi, Emily Huff, Executive Director of Strategy at the ICB.
Neha.
Hello, I'm Neha Brown, non-executive member of the Mid and South Essex ICB.
Jen.
Afternoon, everyone. Jen Kearton. I am the Executive Director for Finance and Commercial at the ICB.
Mark.
Mark Balaam, Associate Non-Executive for the ICB.
Rob.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Percy. I'm the Exec Director for Adults and Health at Thurrock Council.
Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Muckle, Director for Wellbeing, Public Health and Communities.
Thank you. And last but not least, T'other Matthew, though I always think of him as Matt.
I thought you were telling me off, Mike. Matt Sweetin, Executive Medical Director of the ICB.
Thank you. Great. We've got the list of interests. I don't think there's any changes to that or anything which is going to affect the discussion beyond those things that are recorded. So we can move on to the substantive item of today, which is the transitional governance as we move towards the new Essex Integrated Care Board. Tom, could you please set the discussion going by just reminding us what this transition group that we are looking to establish here, what is it intended to do in preparation for moving to a larger integrated care board that comes out of ourselves and neighbouring integrated care boards?
Yes, of course, Mike. And I think we get into some of this in the presentation, don't we, Nick? And so I think it might be worth just moving on to the next slide. So as colleagues are all aware, and as Mike has said, there's clearly been approval to proceed to move towards the proposed Essex ICB, the intention being that that new organisation will be stood up as a statutory body on the 1st of April. However, given that there's clearly a lot of work that needs to be done in advance of the creation of that new ICB, and that we want to, get on and start thinking on an Essex level, we are today talking about effectively the proposed governance arrangements, which will enable the ICBs that currently serve Essex, so that's Mid and South Essex, Suffolk and North East Essex, and Hertfordshire and West Essex, to come together to be able to start to work collectively on the towards the creation of that new ICB, and that will form kind of three key things in terms of kind of three key areas of focus. So the first of those is providing the opportunity for the three ICBs to work together to oversee the transition process into create the new ICB. So that will cover a range of different matters, but clearly we've got a number of, we need to set up the new governance for the new organisation. We need to oversee the safe transfer of staff from across the three organisations together. And there's clearly going to be an element of harmonisation that's going to be required across the three organisations. And so the proposed mechanism we're setting out today for approval, it intends to help us with that. The second area is clearly there is a lot of work we also need to do to develop and set out the plans for the new ICB, both in response to the core planning that will be required in terms of our kind of financial arrangements and financial plans for within the organisation, but equally also thinking about how will the new ICB respond to and deliver on the 10-year plan for health as set out by government, and the NHS England published planning guidance, which we anticipate to be issued shortly. And so this will provide us a mechanism to join up that planning and provide a single approach to planning for the creation of the new ICB. And then thirdly, it will also provide a mechanism for us to oversee commissioning decisions which affect Essex. And so we have a mechanism, so if one part of Essex decides to commission a particular service, there's an opportunity to make sure that all parts of Essex understand that commissioning decision and the impact that it might have on the new ICB once it's created. Indeed, it will also give us an opportunity if there's really good practice or a decision that would make sense for us to do at a whole Essex scale as opposed to on an individual existing ICB footprint within Essex. It enables us to kind of consider that in terms of our commissioning decisions. So the proposals that we have set out today are intended to address those three things and provide a mechanism for us working together, and this follows some conversations that the MSE board and equally the other two boards have had kind of really from last month, but we've now got to a point where we've got a document that we think we're all happy with. We are the first of the three ICBs to consider this. The other two ICBs will be considering these proposals later on this month for approval. So only as and when kind of all of the ICBs boards have approved this set of arrangements will we implement and move to those new arrangements. Nick, did you want to pick up on or Michael, did you want to pick up on the next slide in terms of kind of where we're at around some of the key documentation and other bits and pieces for to kind of which support this arrangement?
Yeah, happy to. So in working together with Herts and West Essex and SNE, we will also be linking in with other ICBs across the region and the clusters that they're working in to prepare for their new organisations. So we've established a memorandum of understanding which just sets out the collaborative way that we would work across the region. That will also need us us to share data in an approved way, and so we've also established a data sharing agreement so that we can move data around in an appropriate way in accordance with legislation. The next two items are sort of handing back to yourself, Tom, I think, in terms of talking about the Essex Joint Committee. So the terms of reference really that we're going to be looking at to establish the committee to achieve all that you've set out.
Thanks, Nick. And on this slide, we kind of set out how we are proposing, how kind of diagrammatically all of this will work. And so the three ICB boards will continue to exist up until the abolition of the existing ICBs and the creation of the new ICB. But as part of these arrangements, they will be delegating kind of certain matters to the Essex Joint Committee. And that Essex Joint Committee will be serviced by three joint subcommittees. The first one of those being the Essex Joint Executive Subcommittee. So that will be comprised of the designate executive team, which has been identified through the recent consultation and appointment process that we've gone through and have announced separately. And alongside that, an Essex Joint Finance and Performance Committee and an Essex Joint Quality Subcommittee as well. And so we can start to work together to collectively understand what are some of the key issues in finance, performance and quality that the new ICB will need to be addressing, and can provide assurance in terms of particularly the quality of the plans that are being produced for the new ICB, that we are confident that those plans will address those issues collectively. Alongside that, it is not proposed at this moment in time to create any sort of joint committee in respect to remuneration or audit. The reason for that is because those are two matters which are generally very organisationally focused. So if we take audit committee in terms of the approval of accounts, those accounts will still be prepared for this year on the existing ICB footprints. However, there is a mechanism as set out within the documentation that if appropriate or necessary, those committees could meet in common. So they would meet at the same time with a common agenda, but we wouldn't be looking to set up a joint committee in that space for this year. And in terms of the scope of the work, which I have kind of covered off a bit earlier, which is on the next slide, Nick, if we can go there. So this sort of sets it out in full in terms of the initial proposed scope. And so, as I've said, in terms of the focus around planning and the transition responsibilities, and alongside that, I won't read the entire list, but these are the areas that will be covered. One of the things that we, which is also within the scope, that's not set out here, but is within the documentation, is also a particular question that the Joint Committee will need to work through in terms of how can we take the opportunity that we have with the creation of the Essex ICB alongside some of the changes which are going on within local government at this moment in time to join up and integrate commissioning. So particularly in the space of learning disabilities, children and young people, and special education needs and disabilities, I think a key consideration for the Joint Committee will be looking at and working through what are the opportunities for us to work better together between the NHS and local government colleagues in the commissioning of those services for the future. So I think that gives us some really interesting and some exciting opportunities. In terms of the membership of the committee, so that is set out here in terms of representation from the designate executive team alongside executive colleagues from SNE and Herts and West Essex. Equally alongside that, we're proposing to maintain our local authority representation from each of the upper tier local authorities that we have in Essex, and equally representation from primary care colleagues as well, one from each of the three patches that we currently have within Essex, and also three non-executive members as well from each of the existing ICB boards as well. And in terms of the matters for future consideration, so there's a question that we're going to need to get into as we move into these new arrangements about how place alliance and healthcare partnership governance, which already is in place across each of the three ICBs, will interface with this structure. Clearly, that will need to link into the planning and the thinking and the work that we are starting, thinking about the future of the neighbourhood health service and how the ICB will go about commissioning that. Primary care and how that obviously interfaces both with that, but also in terms of the commissioning responsibility, and areas like our people and digital boards that we currently have in place in terms of, do we want to move those to cover an Essex footprint? I think the answer to that is probably yes in due course, but we don't want to destabilise any of the good existing work that's going on the existing ICB footprints. And then finally, any decision making tied to geographies wider than Essex. And a key consideration for that will be, it is proposed to create within each region in England, each NHS region within England, something called the Office of the ICBs, to which regional commissioning responsibilities will be transferred to. So things both that we currently already are taking on, so things like specialist commissioning, but also in preparation for NHS England to transfer commissioning responsibility for some of the services that they still retain out into that function. So that will cover areas such as healthcare in prisons and other bits and pieces like that. And so we'll also need to work through how that all works together. And then finally, before I move to the recommendations and we can open for questioning, Mike, is just a quick note to give an update on staffing and where we're at in terms of that work. And so we, as MSE ICB, is working with colleagues in SNE and Herts and West Essex to look to identify what's being described as Essex-facing roles. So these are roles who currently work within Suffolk and North East Essex and Herts and West Essex, who would be eligible for transfer to the new ICB. And so that's currently being prepared and verified, and we aim to start conversations with those individuals in those roles in early November. And then we'll be working in advance of the formal TUPE transfer of those staff to the new Essex ICB to look at what arrangements we need to put in place to make sure that those individuals and teams are appropriately supported in this transitional period. That's likely to look at some sort of secondment type arrangement for individuals into Mid and South Essex ICB, who's sort of coordinating the creation of the new Essex ICB, so people don't get lost and we don't lose any progress and momentum that's currently going on in terms of the good work that's going on across all parts of Essex. And we're still working with NHS England in terms of the pace of organisational change to respond to the running cost reduction target at this moment in time. And what is currently looking likely is we probably will need to pursue some form of phased approach to that restructure and reshaping of the organisation, so we can start to build the capability and capacity that we need for the new organisation, but we can do that in a managed way over the course of the remainder of this year. And then finally, if I just move quickly to the recommendations. I think as set out within the paper, there are 4 recommendations. So firstly, for the board to approve the establishment of the joint committee and the associated subcommittees. Secondly, to approve the terms of reference for that joint committee and the revised schemes of reservation and delegation, and then finally approval of the terms of reference of the subcommittees. I'll pause there, Mike, and hand back to you for any questions.
Thanks very much, Tom. And again, I'll repeat my point about the huge amount of work which has gone on to make all of this happen, on top of maintaining services to the public that we are here to serve. So again, thanks to colleagues, and especially so when organisations are going through transitions on this scale, to keep, as it were, your head focused on the key parts of the job is ever more demanding. So absolutely, we must say thanks to all of the staff in all of the ICBs for sticking so to speak, with it and with us. And thank you, Tom, for the leadership you've been giving, so that people are giving their absolute best. So thank you. Now, so any questions or comments from board members that people wish to raise? This is, I should have said perhaps at the beginning, this is a meeting which is held in public, but it is not a public meeting, and I was given no notice of questions in advance. So this is our meeting, but held in public so that people can see what is going on. Questions or comments from board members? I have one for Jen, and it's the same. It's the obverse side of the same coin, really, for Matt, which is, Jen, are we sure that these arrangements will maintain our financial stability? We've got, targets to meet, and we have to keep, ever more careful hold on the purse strings. Are you comfortable with this? And then, Matt, I'm going to ask you a similar question around clinical work.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the question. We're really clear that the MSE Mid and South Essex Control Total is a priority delivery in this financial year. These Essex governance will not dilute our focus on that at all, and it will carry the MSE responsibilities with it as well as we move through. So I'm comfortable with what's being proposed here today.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, ditto as what Jenna says from a clinical and a quality point of view. So the quality committee will continue to run. Both Giles, who is the executive director of nursing, and myself have been reaching out to our respective medical and nursing counterparts and making inroads, particularly and learning around leadership structures and meeting the key individuals from the leadership world, whether that's in West or North East Essex. So a complete focus still on quality, but work behind the scenes as we go out to our clinical leaders across the patch.
Thank you. And I mean, and hopefully one of the benefits of coming together like this is there's going to be lots of ideas from each of the different groups from which we can learn and will bring us together and will benefit the population we're here to serve. Thank you. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair, and I can also add to thank the team for working very hard to take us to where we are now. I think Tom, you made some reference to conversation with NHS England and so on around cost and stuff like that. I think my question is, there's a lot happening, isn't it? But to what extent are we also, some idea about how we're working with our staff and supporting them at this difficult time? And some of the implications of what's happening with the conversation with NHS England. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Jeffrey. So obviously, this is an incredibly uncertain time for all colleagues who work within ICBs, and I know, I share the board's determination and commitment to do everything that we can to support all of our people as we go through this change. And so, if I answer the first part of your question first, so we have a series of mechanisms in place to ensure that staff members are kept informed, and so we do have regular weekly staff briefs that I host with colleagues. There was in the Mid and South Essex, but we've now opened that to all Essex colleagues for the last 2 weeks, so they have an opportunity to hear the latest news and equally ask any questions that they've got around the transitional process, what it means for them, and so on. We also have quite good resources in place in terms of information on our intranets across all 3 of the ICBs, frequently asked questions, all of that good stuff is in place. We also have the kind of more specific personal support mechanisms. So through our employee assistance program, and for Mid and South Essex, we have run a series of kind of thematic support sessions focusing on things like personal resilience, like focusing on other matters like that for staff to be able to access to get what they need in terms of the support that they need. In terms of the wider point, in terms of how and when any change might happen, that is still the big question that we're working with NHS England on to get a clearer steer in terms of both in terms of the expected time frame from NHS England, given, as we've spoken about, some of the changes to ICBs, may not be as immediate as we kind of originally anticipated when all of the news came out, and so it's going to be a slightly slower transitional process as NHS England steps into its new role and as the ICBs adjust to that particularly. And so once we're clear on that in terms of from NHS England, in terms of those expectations, we can be clearer with all of our people about how and when any transitional process will happen and how it will affect them or their team individually. But the reason for kind of talking about phasing is what is quite clear is that with the changing expectation on ICBs, particularly in the strategic commissioning space, there are probably certain capacity gaps that we've currently got within ICBs because the ICBs weren't designed to respond to some of those areas. And so particularly in the core commissioning space, particularly in some areas of analytics, so there may be certain teams and areas we seek to prioritise. So we are as well set as we can be for the new world as we move into it kind of 1st of April next year.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks. And and Jeffrey, I listened into the one of Tom's briefings earlier this week, and there were the best part of 600 people on the call, which I think indicates that people find them useful or they wouldn't be there. And people could ask any questions they wanted, and Tom responded openly and straightforwardly, including when he didn't know the answer to those questions. So that's we're trying to use open communication, open and honest communication as the vehicle, and Tom is leading that from the top of the organization. So thank you. I mean, I'm aware that for a lot of people, we've had a board seminar on this a few weeks ago. Document got revised and all the rest of it. People have been involved through the various sort of committees and things. So it may well be that you've said everything that you wanted to say around all of this. So I'm not going to prolong the meeting if there's no need to do so. There were 4 questions we were asked, 4 things we were asked to approve. Are you happy that we do that? So it was the establishment, it was the terms of reference, and it was the scheme of reservation and delegation, the so-called SWORD. Are we happy to approve all of those?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody wishing not to approve them, could you please make that clear if you're not? So we as a board, we unanimously support the establishment of these arrangements. Well, Nick, Michael, well done. Thank you very much. And all those who've put the hard work into all of this, and those in the background I don't know the names of yet, and so on. Thank you all very much indeed. And I think that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.